Dr. Peter Kreeft has written over 100 books, which is pretty incredible considering that I probably haven't even read that many books in my entire life. So what are some of his best books? Well, I'll make some recommendations next, but first, as always, we start with our mission.
Always remember, God created us for this time and for this place. If we learn this faith, if we live this faith, if we share this faith, what will the next 100 years look like? Join the mission.
About a month ago, we released that video on building a Catholic home library. If you haven't seen it yet, I'll put a link up at the end. Now, I had a lot of fun making that video and discussing so many of my favorite books, so I thought that maybe I should do that kind of thing more often. And so I started gathering some books together to do just that. And after gathering a small stack of books, I realized that there was more than a few Peter Kreeft books in that stack. And that's when it hit me that maybe I should do a video about Peter Kreeft books. So I dug through the whole house, and I was surprised to find that I actually owned this many. And these were just the ones that I could find. I'm sure that I missed a bunch. And first off, we have this gem. This is called A Handbook of Christian Apologetics. I think this was my first Kreeft book years ago, before I even knew who he was. This was my introduction to apologetics. A friend lent this to me, and then he moved, and we lost contact. And so almost 30 years later, I have not been able to return this book. So Chris, if you're watching, I'm sorry, but here's your book. But anyways, in this book, Kreeft deals with the existence of God, the problem of evil. This is a great book. I refer to this quite often, and I highly recommend it. Now, years later, when I wanted to start reading Aquinas and get into this Summa thing, but I didn't know where to start, I found both of these books, a Summa of the Summa and a shorter Summa, which are excellent. Because if you're new to reading the Summa and you don't know where to start, now we don't really have that problem anymore because there's so many podcasts, there's so many videos out there. Pints with Aquinas, Aquinas 101, all of that stuff can help get you off the ground. But years ago, it wasn't like that. It was very overwhelming. Where do you start? And that's where Peter Kreeft came in. He has these books that kind of give you the essential sections of the Summa, and he includes some commentary. There's lots of diagrams in here that really kind of helped ground, concepts that are probably very, very abstract. Now, if you're just starting out today, I think there's some easier options like the podcasts I mentioned, but also there's other books that we've mentioned. If you're interested, hit me up in the comments and I'll let you know. But anyways, there's some easier options out there. But still, this one especially is absolutely a staple of studying an Aquinas. So even if you have other resources, you should at least have this on the table with you so you can kind of cross-reference things. But anyways, staying on the topic of Aquinas, there is this book. I haven't read it yet, but it looks fantastic. It's called Practical Theology, Spiritual Direction from St. Thomas Aquinas, 350 plus ways your mind can help you become a saint. Now, I think it's fascinating here how he's drawing from the same source, from Aquinas. But over here, it's apologetics, it's theology, what he's known for. But now here, he's pulling out those significant nuggets that relate to spiritual growth. And I think there's just something fascinating. Think about Aquinas, where he's just giving you so much stuff. So anyways, moving on. I haven't read this one. It's called Jesus Shock. It was on my bookshelf. I think I got it at that church festival that I mentioned in the last video. I think I just saw Kreeft's name on it and I grabbed it. But anyways, it says, who is Jesus today? Who is Jesus to you? Get ready to discover Jesus like you've never known him. So it looks like it's a dynamic Catholic book. So looks good. Then following C.S. Lewis's style in the Screwtape Letters, we have the Snakebite Letters. It's devilishly devious secrets for subverting society as taught in the Tempter's Training School. So excellent book right there. And kind of like it, but this one is in the vein of Plato's Dialogues. It's called The Unaborted Socrates. I think this is the oldest Kreeft book I have on the table. But anyways, I could not put this one. I could not put this thing down. This book is amazing. But anyways, it's written like a dialogue between Socrates and an abortionist. All right, so then we got Prayer, the Great Conversation, straight answers to tough questions about prayer. This book right here was given to me by a close friend. Many of you know Justin Farr, who runs theblackcatholic.com, which is part of the Laudare Mission. He's currently in the seminary, and we talk about Aquinas and stuff. But anyways, I think he came across this book in his studies, and he wanted to share it with me. So it's called The Philosophy of Jesus, and in this, Kreeft is arguing that it's not customary to view Jesus as a philosopher, but Kreeft is arguing that he is in fact a philosopher, and so he looks at Jesus' metaphysics, his epistemology, his anthropology, and his ethics, and it's very, very interesting. But perhaps it's a little thick if you don't already have some background in philosophy. Before I get into this stack, these are the ones that I'm actually reading right now. I wanted to show you these. I found these on my wife's shelf. I haven't read any of them, but I wanted to share them with you. This one's called Back to Virtue, and it looks pretty good. I might actually steal that one. This one's called Everything You Ever Wanted to Know About Heaven. And this one's called Making Sense Out of Suffering. So regular viewers might have noticed that this video is about a week late, and this is the reason why. Because while I was trying to make this video, I just could not put these books down, especially these three and that Socrates one. There's just something about the wisdom of this man, how he phrases things. He knows how to hook you in. You pick up a book, and he just pulls you in, and he knows it. He says in this book right here, so this book's called The Greatest Philosopher Who Ever Lived, and the first sentence in the book says, I deliberately avoided putting her name on the front cover of this book in order to make you open the book to find out who she is. So while trying to film this video, I spent most of the time just getting lost in these books, especially these three. This one's called Ask Peter Kreeft, and it's got things like, why are so many philosophers weird? If you were Pope, what is the first thing you would do? How should I vote? What is your favorite joke? Do you still surf? So anyways, I just couldn't stop reading it long enough to turn that camera on anyways. So I'm sorry the video is late. Blame Dr. Kreeft. Now, this book right here is the whole reason that I'm making this video. The Greatest Philosopher Who Ever Lived, like that other book on the philosophy of Jesus, he looks at Mary as a philosopher. And it's truly amazing because he makes the point that a philosopher is literally one who loves wisdom, and it is she who loved wisdom incarnate more than anyone who's ever lived. He says, St. John Henry Newman, writing about Mary's title, Seat of Wisdom, said, Mary has this title because the Son of God, who is also called in Scripture the Word and Wisdom of God, once dwelt in her, and then after his birth of her was carried in her arms and seated in her lap in his first years, thus being, as it were, the human throne of him who reigns in heaven. She's called the Seat of Wisdom. How delightfully literal. So, absolutely fascinating book. Then last, How to Destroy Western Civilization and Other Ideas from the Cultural Abyss. In this book, he diagnoses what is wrong with our society. He starts out by simply saying, if you don't have children, your civilization will cease to exist. Before you can be good or evil, religious or irreligious, you must exist. So he's speaking about the dichotomy between the secularists who make excuses not to have children and traditional families who exist for the sole purpose of having children. He says, today you hear many people in our civilization, the one that used to be called Christendom and is now called simply modern Western civilization, and whose most accurate name theologically is apostate Christendom, give an astonishing explanation or reason to justify not having children or killing the children they already have. You hear this especially from men. who cannot feel the children inside the womb and who can relate to the children as a real entity only after and if he is born. The explanation is that I wouldn't want to bring children into a world like this. It's an irresponsible act to bring children into this world. Then he proceeds to refute that reasoning, saying, of all the civilizations in the history of the world, our modern Western civilization, Europe and North America, is the very best civilization ever into which to bring children by those very materialistic standards, and that the people who give this excuse are using. Now, I think my favorite chapter is called The Logic of Liberalism, if I can find it. The Logic of Liberalism. Today's ideas are truer than yesterday's ideas. Of course, they will be yesterday's ideas tomorrow. Throughout history, there has never been a utopia. Therefore, history proves that there will be one soon. I think this one's my favorite. Men and women are the same, especially women. How about this one? The proletariat will save the world by voting for rich liberals. The idea that all ideas are equal is equal to the idea that not all ideas are equal if all ideas are equal. This one's good. Our ancestors were apes, and we will teach our descendants to believe the same thing about us too. Sola scientia is like sola scriptura. It says that you can be certain only of what science has proved, but science hasn't proved that. So such an interesting guy and a wonderful author, and I hope I've introduced you some great Catholic books. Definitely let me know in the comments below what other books or authors you think we should discuss. Also, check out that other video by clicking right here, and I'll see you over there. I have spent more time walking around this house looking for all of the books that I wanted to include in this video than all of the time I suspect it will take to make this video. But nevertheless, you need a Catholic library in your home, and in this video I will give you 7 steps to build such a library